Sorry for the delay. My name's David Schimpf, and on Wednesdays, my podcast is called Spirit of America. And this is the 250th anniversary of America, the Declaration of Independence. And so every Wednesday, we like to talk about interesting facts and stories that occurred during this time. So, again, I was having some network problems here. Just got back from vacation. Just got back today, and I wasn't sure I could do a podcast today, but got back around 2 o'clock. I was out in Connecticut visiting my daughter's family. My granddaughter Eva's graduation on Saturday, and did a little sightseeing and had a very interesting time. So took a couple of days to get there and a couple of days back. So here I am, back again. My podcast usually is on Mondays and Thursdays for softball only. And then I decided to do a Wednesday broadcast at 4 o'clock each Wednesday concerning the Spirit of America. I may even double it up during the week. Who knows? The interest has been very good. I'm very delighted to find out how much interest there is in learning about the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence and the Spirit of America. And actually, there was 57 signers. The last podcast I did one on Robert Thurston, and he was the 57th signer. Only Alexander. Not Alexander. I'm sorry, I'm lost for words right now after coming back. But anyway, it was him and John Hancock that signed the original Declaration of Independence on July 2nd. And July 2nd, there was a signer, just two signers. They wanted to get it out quickly so they could let the public know that they were declaring independence from Great Britain. So, but they had to go back. The delegates from the 13 colonies had to go back and do some. They assigned five people to partake in the and going back and editing the Declaration of Independence. And let me see here if I can bring up who those five people were in a committee. Again, it was Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. They were working with Jefferson on the draft, and they wanted to add some things or edit some things, and so that was done. And then the Declaration of Independence was actually took place then on the 4th of July, but they didn't have any signers. The delegates weren't there anymore. So they only had two signers, and then some more delegates. They reconvened in August, and the rest of the delegates signed it along with later dates that followed. So it was interesting to know that these things took place. But again, there were some things that took place prior to the Declaration of Independence, and that's what we're leading up to, and that is there were some battles. We talked about those. There was the first convention, which was in 1775, and then there was the second convention that took place because they really didn't get a chance to do much. In the first one, it was more of a just meeting to discussing. They didn't want to put their so-called lives on the line back then to declare independence. So when this convention took place, the Second Continental Convention, it took place starting on June the 28th. So it lasted a few days. And I talked about this in my last podcast, but I want to redo a little bit of that. Those who didn't see it or want to refresh your memory that, they met in called Farmers Hall, not Independence Hall. It was, and it was a very, very muggy, hot time of year. Philadelphia and the East Coast in July is late June and July is not comfortable. And back then, they didn't want to have their voices heard because they debated, and it got a little boisterous sometimes and vocal. That's the way debates are sometimes. We had delegates that were not in favor of not in favor of declaring independence. So there was some debate going back and forth. For instance, a colony of Pennsylvania had 3 immigrants from England and out in the United Kingdom, and obviously they weren't really in favor of declaring independence from England. So they convened, had the windows shut, had drapes pulled. The only light that came in was probably from candlelight, and they had some upper windows higher up in the building, so that lit kindly dimly lit the hall. But now they met and they debated and they prayed. They stopped many times to pray, and there was times when they stopped just to maybe meet amongst themselves for each colony. So you had the 13 colonies, and then you had delegates from each one of those colonies, and so they met like a little committee amongst themselves to talk, and then they would reconvene. So there was a lot of things going on. You can just picture in your mind what this was like. You had these 50 some delegates that was meeting and discussing, and obviously they weren't agreeable on many things. It's kind of like a Congress of today. Some over here on this side, some on this side, they don't agree, and they convene and they try to come to an agreement. Well, it was back then. We weren't even a country, so they were meeting secretly, and obviously you had some Tory spies that maybe wanted to listen in, so they wanted to keep those windows shut. But what I really want to talk about today is what took place just prior to this convention, okay? And that was called. Let me bring it up. It was called the Battle of Fort Sullivan. Now, few of us have ever heard of Fort Sullivan. Okay, it was best known for a pivotal Revolutionary War battle on June 28th of 1776. Now, remember, that's just about the same day that the delegates were going to meet. So this very famous battle was kind of taking place at the same time. It was a makeshift fort made out of spongy palmetto logs. In other words, are kind of like rotten logs from trees and stuff, palmetto trees. And it took place in South Carolina. Okay. It was a 10-hour bombardment from the British Royal Navy at that time. A British fleet under Commodore Peter Parker and General Henry Clinton arrived in South Carolina with the goal of capturing Charleston and securing a stronghold so they could defend the harbor entrance on Sullivan's Island. So this was a very pivotal area. They wanted to basically get a foothold in the South because they really didn't have one yet. Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, those colonies down there, they weren't really secure yet. Most of New England and New York and New Jersey and those areas, they were kind of under a strong foothold of the British, but not down there yet. So, and the fort was constructed by patriotic forces under the command of Colonel William Moultrie. And later on, the fort was named after him. It was called Fort Moultrie, but back then it was Fort Sullivan. And the 2nd South Carolina Regiment garrisoned the fort with roughly 435 men and 31 cannons. General Charles Lee, a Continental Army commander sent to assess the defenses, initially defense dismissed Fort Sullivan as a slaughter pen. However, the Patriots' unique construction method became their secret weapon. The fort's walls were built of two parallel rows of palmetto logs packed with thick sand. So these logs were kind of hollowed out and packed with sand. And when the British warships bombarded the fort with over 1,000 cannonballs, the impacts, all it did was the soft, fibrous palmetto wood absorbed the impact, more or less, without splintering, and the sand further dampened the destructive force of the artillery. So all this bombarding that was going on, 1,000 cannonballs, think about that. It really didn't destroy the fort. And throughout the 9-hour siege, the heavily outnumbered American garrison fired their cannons with remarkable accuracy. They severely damaged several British ships, including the HMS Actaeon, which eventually had to be abandoned and burned. Simultaneously, an attempt at a British amphibious landing at a breach inlet was repelled by American riflemen and artillery under General William Thompson. By nightfall, the battered British fleet was forced to retreat. By the way, I talked about William Thompson, the colonel, a couple weeks ago. He was the other signer. And then there was a legend of Sergeant Jasper. Okay, the legend of Sergeant Jasper. During the intense naval bombardment, a British cannonball severed the flagpole, causing the blue South Carolina flag to crash to the ground outside the fort's walls. Sergeant William Jasper bravely leaped over the wall under heavy enemy fire, retrieved the flag, attached it to a makeshift pole, and kept it raised. This inspiring act cemented his place in history and became a symbol of patriot resilience. Okay? For this heroic act, by the way, Sergeant Jasper, later on in our history, was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Think about that. One of the first recipients of the Medal of Honor was Sergeant Jasper. Okay? Now, the Medal of Honor obviously was much later on in our history, but he was I shouldn't say use the word awarded, because awarded isn't the proper word. He was presented and given, achieved the Medal of Honor, okay? Following the miraculous victory, the fort was renamed Fort Moultrie in honor of its commander. The victory at Fort Sullivan kept South Carolina free from British occupation for years and provided a massive morale boost just days before the formal adoption of the Declaration of Independence. Okay? So that is the history of Fort Sullivan. I wanted to talk about that a little bit because it actually began the same day as the convening of the Second Continental Congress. Now, of course, back then, word traveled slowly. Mail was slow. It was by Pony Express. Things that were done were slow, okay, getting word out. So when they were reconvening and this battle went on, it was at the same time. Nobody knew this at the days that it was going on. It was probably a few days later, I would imagine, a couple days it took for that word to get to the delegates that, hey, we defeated the British at Fort Sullivan. Okay? This kind of built the morale of the delegates also. So now we've got this meeting taking place. And we're going to talk about this next Wednesday. Today being the 17th, that would be the 24th of June. We're going to talk about this and the meeting and what all took place during those debates. Okay? Because the Declaration of Independence was one of the most remarkable papers that was ever written. so eloquently written by Thomas Jefferson with Ben Franklin's help, with these other three committee members. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. Uh, we shouldn't be, what I should say, not patriotic about this time 250 years ago. That's what we're celebrating, the Declaration of Independence from the greatest army, the greatest navy, and probably the meanest king, King George the Third. Our independence from the country that we had no business beating, but we did. Okay, so let's just keep this in mind. I'll see you next Wednesday around 4 o'clock. Okay. Uh, Remember,